Hi, I'm Ernie Zor, and this video demonstrates the new Revised Ohio Child Support Guidelines version 11. I'll refer to it as Roxie 11 for short. By the way, we recently uploaded 2 videos that deal with the changes between the old worksheets and the new, and you may want to check them out on YouTube. But this video will be dealing more with program operation. Incidentally, I'll be using a pre-release version of Roxie 11, so don't be put off if, by the time you view this video, you've got the app and your screens look a bit different from mine. Well, let's start with the caption. I can say 2 things about it. First, whatever names you enter in the Parent A and Parent B fields, those names will appear under the signature lines at the end of the worksheet. Second, take care to check only one of the parenting arrangement checkboxes. We've made that point clearer in the new version 11, but I recall getting enough calls about the checkboxes in the old version that we made an FAQ YouTube video on that very subject. That video is outdated now because the way the checkboxes are laid out in Roxie 11, I don't think they're confusing at all any longer. Incidentally, if you're new to Roxie or you're not as computer savvy as you'd like to be, and you're wondering how to start a new file, there are 2 ways. First, do nothing. Roxie 11 creates a new blank file for you automatically when you start it up, so you don't need to do anything. Second, you can click on the File menu and select New. I just started Roxie 11 right now, so what you see on my screen is a blank worksheet. Just for further information, you can complete any field in any order by clicking on it, which I'll do right now. I'll jump to the Parent A annual gross income field just by clicking on it. Or I can tab my way through the form, and I'll press tab and you'll see we'll go to the parent. No, we're going into the use minimum wage, then the date. There you can see it going through, cycling through all the fields. So that's another way you can go through. And also, I think you'll see that there's actually 3 kinds of fields. Fields you can tab to and you type information in them. They're light yellow in color. There are also fields that you can tab to, but they complete themselves automatically. They're blue and they're overridable, which I'll explain in a moment. And the third are the read-only fields, which can't be tabbed to or overwritten. They complete themselves automatically. I'm going to complete the caption right now very quickly. That's good enough to get us through. And having done that, let's move on to the gross income section. That's lines 1 through 8. I'm going to scroll up a bit. There, I can get them all into view. On line 1, enter the expected annual gross income. I'll enter some in right now. Just so I have something to work with. Now, most receipts are considered income, and the line 1 section of the ODJFS manual, which I'll explain more about in a second, provides more information about what is income. What you may find helpful is that if you're looking at a pay stub or a parent is unemployed and you want to impute income at the minimum wage rate, you can use the income estimator there on line 1. You can't miss it. They'll put a box around this thing so you can see it. You activate it in one of 2 ways. Number 1, you either check the use minimum wage checkbox to annualize Ohio's minimum wage, or 2, complete the date and year-to-date fields in the income annualizer. If you're going to work from a pay stub, you would enter the date of the pay stub, the year-to-date amount of pay, and you'd select the frequency with which the parent was paid. For example, daily, weekly, monthly, etc. And the answer will appear on line 1. If you're not using the estimator, make sure the minimum wage checkbox is not checked and the date and year-to-date fields are cleared. Incidentally, like many families, if this was the only income, I'd be done with the worksheet. You can see the support amounts appearing in red at the top of the screen. The calculation was actually complete as soon as I pressed tab and left the income field. So everything happens instantaneously. Let's move along to line 2. Line 2 deals with overtime bonuses and commissions, and it hasn't changed from the old worksheet very much, but now it has received its own line number. The calculation takes the lower of the last year or the 3-year average, with the exception that you can use a reasonably expected amount. A typical example is where an employee receives notice from their employer that there will be no more overtime in the upcoming year. In that circumstance, of course, it doesn't make sense to include either the 3-year average or the last year as income. The old worksheets stated that expressly, and although the new one does not, the reasonable expectation exception still applies. And if you need a cite, it's 3119.01B13. Note that if you're not using the reasonable expectation line, leave it blank, because once you make an entry on that line, it's going to use that amount as the line 2D income amount. As I mentioned a moment ago, the Ohio Department of Job and Family Services, ODJFS for short, now publishes a manual to accompany the worksheets. That's new. There was no manual for the old worksheets. And this is a pretty neat feature of Roxie 11. You can access a specific line instruction in the manual by right-clicking on the field and selecting line instructions. Let's try it. I'll do that with line 1 here. I'm right-clicking on it and I'm choosing line instructions. Boop, went to the, is that cool? It went to the online instructions. This is directly quoted out of the manual, and there it is. Now, hopefully I can get back to the program. There we go. All right. The rest of the lines in the income section are self-explanatory, and little has changed from the prior worksheet. Over the years, we noticed that whenever you put 2 or more accountants together, they'll have different ways of doing things, and that's why you see that line 3C is overridable. That means that if there are extenuating circumstances affecting the calculation of self-employment tax, you could put in your own amount. Here's an example. The old worksheets used a 5.6% adjustment, even though the tax law had changed, I think, almost a decade earlier, making the percentage 6.2%. So the point is that the blue field is overridable. And that means that Roxie 11 will complete the blue fields, but if you want to change the contents of the field, you can do so by overriding it. How do you override it? I'm going to show you. You go to the field. Let's go to this 3C. I'm going to get in the field by clicking on it. I'm going to click the override button. You see the numbers there turn to red, and I can put, let's say, put $1,000 or $100 in there. And of course, I didn't have any income on line 3A, so, but the point is that it's using the number that I put in instead of the number that it was calculating on its own, which was 0. Let me go back, and I could take the override off by simply going back to that field and canceling. See the cancel button up here? Canceling that. The number, just to give you a cue, if it's red, it's reminding you that it's overridden number. If it's black, it means that Roxie 11 is calculating the number. Now, because all income, taxable and non-taxable, earned and unearned, is included in income, line 6 is used for anything that doesn't fit on lines 1 through 5. This includes spousal support to any spouse. It does not include child support. The last thing to mention in the income section is line 8. This amount isn't really used in the calculation of child support, but it does set a maximum limit on which the court can order a parent to provide health insurance. Therefore, if you scan down the worksheet and you ask yourself, well, I don't see how line 8 is impacting the calculation. Well, the answer is it doesn't impact the calculation. It's just there as a maximum. And that brings us to the next section, adjustments to income. That's lines 9 through 13. And I'm going to scroll up here so I can get 9 through 13 into view. There we go. There are 3 adjustments. One for minor children of one of the parents, which are not subject to the current order, in other words, from a prior marriage or relationship. And one adjustment, a second adjustment, is for out-of-pocket health insurance premiums. And the third adjustment is for spousal support payments. Now, in this new worksheet, the adjustment for other children isn't dependent on the federal dependency exemption any longer. Instead, it's based on putting the other children into the new support table, and that's what you see happening on line 9D. The new worksheet uses the child support table amount for all children, all meaning children subject to this worksheet, as well as these quote-unquote other children. The annual support amount is then divided by the number of all the children, and this yields a per-child amount that is multiplied by the number of other children. That's the amount of the adjustment. Line 10, the out-of-pocket health insurance premium line, is self-explanatory, and I won't spend any time on that line. Line 11 is for spousal support, and again, this line is self-explanatory, but I will caution you not to be confused by the new tax law that you hear spoken about that provides that spousal support is no longer includable in income to the recipient or deductible to the payor. That's income tax law. For purposes of calculating child support, spousal support payments are deductible. The question that used to come up is spousal support income to the recipient? The answer was, and still is, yes. It's specifically referred to in the income definition, which is ORC 3119-01C12, and goes on line 6 as other income. The next section is the income shares section. That's line 14 through 17, and I'm going to bring those into view here. There we go. First, line 15 determines whether a parent's individual income falls in the shaded area of the support table. The shaded portion marks the combined income as being on the low income side of the child support table. Combined gross incomes that fall into the shaded area affect 2 aspects of the calculation. First, if the combined gross income falls within the shaded area of the table, it changes the way you calculate support when a family has 7 or more children. Second, being in the shaded area affects the calculation of the child care adjustment, which I will be covering in part 2. Line 16 calculates the parent's combined income by adding together both adjusted incomes, and after that, line 17 calculates the percentage that each parent's income bears to their combined income. You know, that just about brings us to a close here of part 1, except to say that if I wanted to save what I've done so far, I can click on the save button, which I'll show you right now. This is that easy. And, okay, you'll notice that the Save As dialog popped up, and that popped up because, as it says on the title line up there, I haven't given this file a name yet. So I'll just call this YouTube ROCS, I can't type, ROCSG11 demo. Okay, the reason, again, did I mention this already? The reason that Save As dialog popped up is because I had not given it a name. If it had a name already, all I would have to do, again, would click on the Save button, but I wouldn't see the Save As dialog because it already knew the name and it would just go ahead and save it. So, what's going to happen next? Well, part 2 will cover looking up the support obligation in the new child support table, a new 10% credit for visiting parents with 90 or more overnight visitations per year, the child care credit, cash medical support, and the subject of deviation. That's it. I want to thank you for visiting the Puritas Spring Software YouTube channel, and thank you for viewing this video. Be sure to watch part 2, which will be uploaded very soon. And you also, like I think I mentioned before, earlier on, that you may want to take a look at the FAQ videos numbers 14 and 15, dealing specifically with the differences between the old and new worksheets. At any rate, I hope you visit us again real soon, and until you do, I wish you all the best. Take care.